The first vibration of my phone shattered the silence at 2:41 Iona Menhat, pulling me from uneasy sleep in my Seattle penthouse. The message on the screen wasn't a goodnight text from my kids or a work emergency. It was my wife's final betrayal, a smug, casual declaration that she had sold our Lake Tahoe cabin, drained our savings, and run off to Santorini with her 26-year-old yoga instructor. She even ended it with a namaste, enjoy being broke. I placed the phone on the nightstand, exhaled slowly, and smiled. For a moment, I simply stared at it, the cold blue light cutting through the dark room. After 22 years of marriage, after building a life together brick by brick, she chose to end it with an emoji and a cheap shot. A younger version of me might have thrown the phone, raged into the void, demanded answers, but that man was gone. I simply set the phone back on the nightstand, exhaled slowly, and smiled. Vanessa thought she had caught me by surprise. She thought she had won. What she didn't know was that months ago, when her girls' retreats grew suspiciously frequent and the financial discrepancies started stacking up, I had already begun preparing. While she and her Boitui Leo planned their escape, I was meeting quietly with Monica Reyes, one of Seattle's most relentless asset protection attorneys. Tonight, Vanessa believed she was sprinting across the finish line, leaving me bankrupt and broken. What she didn't realize was that I had built walls she couldn't see, traps she couldn't spring. While she boarded her first-class flight to Greece, feeling invincible, I had already frozen our joint assets under a court order. While she toasted her new beginning with Leo, all the funds she thought she had stolen were sitting safely in a court-monitored account, utterly out of her reach. I stood, walking across the apartment to the massive floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. Below, Seattle slept, wrapped in the cold, wet mist of early spring. My reflection stared back at me, calm, steady, and unbroken. "Let's see how well you handle losing everything," I murmured to the empty room. The first alert buzzed on my phone seconds later, an attempted login to our frozen account from a foreign IP address. A second buzz followed, an automated fraud notification. Vanessa's world was already beginning to crumble, and all I had to do was watch it fall. Looking back, the cracks in our marriage hadn't appeared overnight. They crept in slowly, disguised as harmless changes, too subtle at first to name. Vanessa and I had met in our mid-20s, both ambitious, both hungry for a life bigger than what we had known. For years, we moved in lockstep, raising Sophie and Caleb, growing our careers, building a life in the heart of Seattle. But somewhere around our 20th anniversary, something shifted. Vanessa, who had once laughed at meditation apps and health fads, suddenly found religion in wellness culture. She became obsessed with yoga retreats, sound baths, and energy healing weekends, all under the guidance of much younger instructors. Leo, the so-called spiritual guru she would eventually run away with, entered our lives around that time. At first, I welcomed the change, encouraged her when she said she wanted to invest in herself. She deserved that freedom. But then came the late nights under vague explanations, the months-long silent withdrawal that no meditation could explain away. Financially, the warning signs piled up faster than I wanted to admit. Sudden $2,000, 0 cents charges for wellness packages, weekly withdrawals from our shared account with no receipts, disappearing jewelry. Every time I questioned her, Vanessa would flash that brilliant smile, the one that had once made me forgive anything and dismiss my concerns as paranoia. "You work too much, Nate," she'd say, tousling my hair like a child's. "You need to trust me. It's just yoga, not a secret cult." But my instincts, honed over decades of managing multi-million-dollar budgets, told me otherwise. I started to notice the locked phone, the carefully edited credit card statements, the fake weekend workshops that aligned perfectly with Leo's tagged Instagram locations. Still, I stayed silent. I wasn't ready to confront the woman I had built my world around. I clung to the hope that maybe it was just a phase, something she'd snap out of once the newness wore off. I see now that Vanessa had been preparing her escape long before that midnight text. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. I wasn't a man who made decisions lightly, especially not decisions that would alter the course of my life. So when I finally accepted that Vanessa wasn't just slipping away emotionally, but plotting something far worse, I turned to what I knew best: strategy, patience, and precision. My first step was hiring Monica Reyes, a lawyer with a reputation for dismantling complex financial betrayals with surgical efficiency. We met discreetly in a private office overlooking Puget Sound, the rain tapping steadily against the windows as I laid out my suspicions. Monica listened without interruption, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "Document everything," she said finally. "Every receipt, every withdrawal, every lie. Build a timeline, quietly. If she's planning something, we'll catch it in the act." From that day forward, I became an invisible auditor of my own life. I cross-referenced credit card charges with travel itineraries, captured screenshots of suspicious text messages Vanessa left carelessly open on her tablet, and pulled months of bank statements from backup servers she thought I'd forgotten about. I even installed a security system upgrade under the pretense of protecting the penthouse, but really, it gave me logs of every time she came and went. Within 2 months, the forensic accountant Monica brought onto the team uncovered a hidden checking account Vanessa had opened under her maiden name, siphoning small but regular amounts from our joint investments. Then came the damning discovery: draft emails negotiating the secret sale of our Lake Tahoe cabin, a property that had belonged to my family since my grandfather first built it in 1958. Vanessa was methodical. I'll give her that. She structured the withdrawals just below thresholds that would trigger automated bank alerts. She used burner email accounts. She met Leo for planning sessions masked as yoga mentorships. But no matter how carefully she tried to cover her tracks, she underestimated me. The day Monica and I secured the emergency asset protection orders was the day I knew I had turned the tide. Any large movement of assets would now be flagged instantly. All major properties had been placed under temporary court supervision. Vanessa thought she was running a slick con, but all along she was walking into a legal minefield I had quietly built, step by careful step. I didn't know exactly when she'd make her move, but when she did, I would be ready. I wasn't going to fight her impulsively. I was going to win deliberately. By the time Vanessa's plane was halfway across the Atlantic, the fallout had already begun. Just minutes after her mocking text lit up my screen, my phone buzzed again, a fraud alert from our primary bank. Someone was attempting an unauthorized transfer of $400,000, 0 cents, from our investment portfolio to an offshore account flagged in the Canary Islands. I sipped my coffee, still in my robe, watching the alerts roll in with clinical detachment. Every attempt Vanessa made to access our accounts triggered another automatic freeze, another notification sent directly to Monica's office. She was scrambling, realizing too late that the financial bridge she thought she had burned behind her had never caught fire at all. I drafted a simple reply to her original text: "You might want to check your balance." I imagined her sitting poolside in Santorini, sipping overpriced champagne, phone in hand, the smile slipping from her face, as the reality said she hadn't escaped with the spoils of 22 years of partnership. She had fled empty-handed into a new life she couldn't afford. Before sunrise, I called Sophie and Caleb. They deserved to hear it from me before the inevitable blowback hit social media or family gossip circles. My children, now 23 and 25, were old enough to understand betrayal, but nothing could soften the blow of discovering their mother had chosen to abandon more than just her marriage. As I explained what had happened, the hidden accounts, the stolen assets, the court orders, Sophie cried quietly, while Caleb's face hardened with a silent, simmering fury I had rarely seen. "We're with you, Dad," Caleb said firmly, as if declaring allegiance in a battle neither of them had wanted, but now had no choice but to fight. I hung up the phone, feeling both heavier and lighter. The truth was out. There would be no more pretending, no more desperate hope for reconciliation. Vanessa had made her choice, and I had made mine. Across the city, the early morning fog began to lift, revealing the gleaming skyline beneath a steel-gray sky. I watched it unfold from the living room window, a city waking up, indifferent to the small catastrophes unfolding behind closed doors. Vanessa's game was over. Mine had just begun. By mid-morning, my brother David was at my door, travel bags slung over one shoulder, eyes sharp and serious. He had caught the first flight out of San Francisco the moment he heard what Vanessa had done. David and I hadn't always seen eye to eye. Years of sibling rivalry saw to that, but when the real storms hit, he always showed up. We sat at the kitchen island, the stainless steel surfaces gleaming under the cold light of day, papers and laptops spread between us. Monica joined via video call, her voice crisp, her strategy airtight. "Everything is holding," she confirmed. "The asset protection orders are active, the financial guardian has control of the accounts, and Vanessa's passport has been flagged." David whistled low under his breath. "She's not getting far with that yoga boy of hers." I cracked the first real smile I had managed in days. Together, we reviewed the contingency plans, responses to anticipated legal challenges, asset seizure protections, emergency motions if Vanessa tried to play the victim publicly. Caleb and Sophie called in separately, each volunteering to provide statements if needed, evidence of their mother's erratic behavior. Hearing their steady voices on the speakerphone, feeling David's unshakable presence beside me, reminded me that I wasn't alone in this. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was protecting everything we had built, everything Vanessa had tried to discard. As we wrapped up the call, Monica's voice turned a shade more serious. "She's going to panic," she warned. "Expect her to reach out. First angry, then desperate. Stay calm, let her dig her own hole." I nodded, steeling myself for the days ahead. Vanessa had lit the match that burned down our marriage. Now she was about to discover that she had no idea how deep the fire would go, or how much of it would turn back on her. The first call came around noon, Vanessa's number flashing across my phone screen like a warning flare. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. A minute later, a flood of frantic text messages followed. The tone had shifted sharply from smug to enraged. "You're overreacting. This is our money. You have no right to freeze my accounts." I read each message with detached curiosity, as if observing the unraveling of a stranger. By evening, the anger gave way to desperation. A longer email arrived, addressed to both me and Monica, laced with half-hearted apologies and vague explanations. "Leo misled me. I thought you didn't care anymore. Can we settle this quietly?" She claimed she had acted out of fear, painting herself as the confused, impulsive wife who had simply made a mistake, but the evidence told a different story. Secret bank accounts, fraudulent real estate negotiations, plans to expatriate stolen funds. Mistakes didn't come with offshore wiring instructions. Monica advised me not to respond directly. Instead, we documented everything. Every email, every frantic voicemail, every attempt to manipulate or gaslight. Vanessa didn't know it yet, but her desperate communications were strengthening our case, proving her intent to abandon me financially and emotionally. Meanwhile, word reached us through mutual acquaintances that Leo had jumped ship the moment he realized there was no windfall waiting for him. Vanessa had burned every bridge she could find, only to discover she was stranded on the other side. Late that night, Another email arrived, this one almost laughable in its sudden humility. Nathan, please, think of the kids. Think of what this is doing to them. Let's not drag this into court. For a brief moment, anger flickered through me, not because she had invoked our children's pain, but because she dared to pretend she cared after planning to gut their inheritance for her selfish fantasy. I closed the laptop slowly, feeling the steady, cold certainty that had guided me from the beginning. Vanessa had made her choices with open eyes. Now, she would face the consequences with no illusions of mercy. The courtroom at King County Superior Court was a cavernous space of marble and sharp echoes, a fitting arena for the final battle Vanessa had unwittingly provoked. I sat beside Monica at the plaintiff's table, my hands steady on the polished oak surface, my gaze fixed forward. Sophie and Caleb sat directly behind me, forming an unbreakable wall of silent support. David stood by the aisle, arms crossed, his presence a quiet. When Vanessa entered, trailing behind her high preems but visibly tense attorney, she looked nothing like the woman who had once ruled every room with effortless grace. Gone was the polished glow, replaced by a brittle shell, thinner, gaunter, her designer suit hanging awkwardly on her frame. She avoided my eyes, pretending to be absorbed in the sheaf of documents clutched in her manicured hands. Judge Patel, a woman known in legal circles for her zero tolerance for deceit, entered briskly, immediately commanding the room's attention. "We are here today on the matter of Cole versus Cole," she began, her voice sharp as a gavel. And Monica rose first, laying out the evidence like a surgeon presenting x-rays. The hidden accounts, the offshore transfer attempts, the unauthorized real estate sale, and most damning, the recorded messages Vanessa had foolishly left behind. Messages detailing her intent to leave me financially crippled. Vanessa's attorney, a silver-haired man who clearly thought charm could substitute for facts, tried to frame her actions as the result of emotional duress and a breakdown under marital strain. Judge Patel wasn't buying it. Emotional duress does not explain deliberate, systematic financial deception over a span of 8 months, she said, her tone cutting. When Vanessa was finally called to the stand, her defense crumbled almost immediately. Under Monica's cross-examination, she stuttered, contradicted herself, and ultimately admitted that, yes, she had planned to drain our accounts, but only because she felt trapped. Judge Patel's expression never changed, but the finality in her ruling was unmistakable. The asset protection orders would remain in place until the divorce concluded. A financial guardian would oversee the division of assets. Vanessa was ordered to surrender her passport, barred from leaving the state without explicit court approval, and, most significantly, I was granted exclusive use of the penthouse and the Lake Tahoe cabin, along with control of our retirement accounts, pending final division. As Vanessa stumbled from the stand, she glanced at me once, her eyes a swirling mess of anger, regret, and something dangerously close to fear. I didn't return the look. I rose slowly, buttoned my jacket, and nodded once to Monica. Victory wasn't loud. It was quiet, complete, and utterly inevitable. 3 months after that decisive courtroom battle, the divorce was finalized with a clean, merciless efficiency. Judge Patel's ruling stood firm through every half-hearted objection Vanessa's new lawyer tried to file. The final settlement awarded me full ownership of the Seattle penthouse and the Lake Tahoe cabin, along with 75% of our retirement accounts and investment portfolio. Vanessa received a modest cash settlement, enough to find a small condo, but nowhere near the windfall she had plotted for. She was also ordered to cover all of my legal fees in full, a stipulation Monica fought hard to include, and one that Judge Patel had granted without hesitation. Professionally, Vanessa's reputation suffered as word spread quietly through Seattle's tight-knit business and social circles. Former friends who had once admired her polished image now crossed the street to avoid uncomfortable conversations. Leo, predictably, had long since vanished, moving on to a wealthier and even more gullible target in Miami. Meanwhile, I settled back into a quieter life, a life free of subterfuge, secrets, and walking on eggshells. Sophie and Caleb remained close, visiting often, their loyalty a constant reminder that while one branch of our family had withered, the roots remained strong. There was no joy in Vanessa's fall, no satisfaction in watching her struggle, only relief. The steady, healing kind that came from knowing I had protected what mattered, salvaged what could be salvaged, and left the wreckage behind me. The storm had passed. All that remained now was the work of rebuilding. 1 year after Vanessa's midnight betrayal, I stood before a packed room at a financial empowerment seminar in downtown Seattle, sharing my story, not out of bitterness, but as a warning and a guide. Preparation isn't paranoia, I told them. It's self. Sophie and Caleb sat in the front row, their pride steadying me, their support the most valuable thing I had salvaged from the wreckage. As I drove back to the Lake Tahoe cabin afterward, the mountains rising against a burning sunset, I realized something simple and absolute. Betrayal hadn't broken me, it had revealed me. The life ahead was mine alone to shape, and for the first time in decades, I wasn't looking backward. Betrayal doesn't have to define you, it can refine you. Nathan Cole's story is a powerful reminder that preparation, patience, and resilience can turn even the deepest betrayal into a foundation for something stronger. When faced with deception, he didn't lash out or crumble. He moved strategically, protected what mattered, and rebuilt a life rooted in truth and strength. His experience shows that trust is valuable, but so is vigilance. Protect yourself, know your worth, and never let someone else's dishonesty dictate your future. It's not about revenge, it's about resilience and the quiet, unstoppable power of standing up for yourself when it matters most. If this story inspired you, if you believe in fighting smart, staying strong, and helping others do the same, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who might need it. Let's spread stories of strength, strategy, and survival. Your support helps keep these powerful narratives alive. Stay strong, stay smart, and remember, the best revenge is living well on your own terms.